Thanks for the opportunity to address this conference. I'm just going to run through some slides on parliamentary modernisation in Jersey. And before I get going, this is who we are. Jersey is that little island just off the French coast. Jersey is a dependency of the British Crown, so it's not independent of the UK, but it's a very autonomous entity. And has a great deal of legislative autonomy from the United Kingdom. So we're not represented in the UK Parliament in any way. We have our own unicameral parliamentary body called the States of Jersey. The only restriction, I suppose, is our primary legislation needs to be approved by the UK before it comes into force. So when I reflect on parliamentary modernisation, this is what our assembly used to look like. And as you can see, if I just run it as a slideshow, actually, you can see more clearly, I think. As you can see, this is from 1906. Apart from the fact that everybody was present was a man, a lot of paper, a lot of books. And actually, if I reflect on when I started working in the States of Jersey in 2015, it didn't look very different. There were some women and the clothing was perhaps slightly more colourful. But actually, if you came into the assembly on a normal sitting day, you would say the same thing, lots of paper, lots of books, not a lot of technology. So I'm looking back to 2015 because I'm actually moving on from my role as greffier in Jersey as chief clerk this year. So I will have been there for six and a half years when I leave. So it's a good time really to look back and to think about how things were, how things have changed, and then how things could be different for the future. So if I look back to 2015 when I began, paper was king. Everything we did was on paper, and it was prepared for paper. And our whole organisation, our parliamentary service, was based on creating, moving, filing pieces of paper and ultimately throwing them away. And literally we had different departments who specialised in different aspects of those paper-based tasks. We were printing large quantities of all the different parliamentary materials, the motions and the bills and so on. Despite the fact that we also were using the internet, as I'll come on to. So we were in the midst of a transition from a entirely paper-based system to something different, but we hadn't really moved away very much from paper. Strangely though, email was our main method of communication. So we were preparing paper, but we were moving it around electronically. So documents were being prepared in Word, documents were being prepared as PDFs, and then we had a lot of printing out in order to create the paper resource that we were still regarding as the primary way of communicating in the assembly. We had a website, and in many respects it was a good website, but it was a repository, it was a library really for expert users. So if you knew the different terminology in the assembly, if you knew what all the different categories of information were, it was all there going back quite a few years, and was quite easily searchable. But we didn't have any communication with the public to any extent. We didn't really use the website to communicate, and it was a very text-based product. And when you clicked the link, it almost invariably took you to a PDF, which was a document that had been written for paper. So it was a resource to extract material that was intended to be seen in paper. So if I look to what's changed, we changed our website in 2018. When I say we changed it for one reason or another, which I'll come on to, we couldn't change the back end. So we're limited in what the website can achieve, but we changed it so that it was much more focused on what users might want. And that was a big change of mindset in terms of thinking not what we would want to put out, but what users might want to find. So we created a website which was more colorful, which had links to things that people might want, which could publish news stories, which is something we'd never done before, and which could, at a stretch, publish video. And that was a big change. So the repository is still there, but the front of the website is a much more user-friendly and accessible way of presenting information to the public, of communicating, and of signposting to things that they might want to see. We also introduced webcasting, and I mentioned other uses of video, but because of the limitations of our website, our webcasts are hosted somewhere else, which is slightly awkward. I noted the discussion at the last session about e-petitions, and we introduced an e-petition facility, very much based on the UK's e-petition facility. So it's almost a carbon copy, with some changes to reflect different terminology in Jersey, but it was an initiative borrowed from another parliament. We've made a lot more use of social media to communicate and to bring people back to our website, something that wasn't done before. In terms of committee work, I've included a question mark there around digital first. It's something we've tried to encourage. I've tried to encourage the presentation of reports in a way which suits digital consumption rather than paper. And we've made some progress with that, but still, I think some way to go. But we are a lot better at using social media to engage people in the work of our scrutiny committees. So there are, if you were to look at now at what they say, they're constantly asking the public for questions to put to ministers, for example, which can then be used in evidence sessions and providing that direct link between the citizen and the minister who's been asked a question. And we completely changed our organizational structure and all of our job descriptions. And more significantly, we have our own digital and public engagement team, which is brand new, with staff coming into post now, whose job it is to engage the public using digital means as far as we can. So the constraints, there are things that I would like to have done that we haven't done over the last 6 years. So why is it that we haven't been able to do all the things that we wanted? So resourcing is the top of the list. And by that, I don't just mean budget, because like many parliamentary bodies, we are not bound by government in terms of budget restrictions. We can propose our own budget directly to the Assembly, and we've been able to secure increased resources. But the problem is more the island is quite small, and the resourcing available for digital transformation in a small island is necessarily constrained. There just aren't the people, even in the private sector sometimes, to deliver the sorts of projects we might want to deliver. So our e-petition solution came from the UK, for example. Even now today, I've discovered that 6 weeks after we asked, we're still not able to put in place a simple email solution for a new electoral authority body that we've set up. And we're having to look around for a private sector firm to assist with it. And that links on to skills. We don't have the skills within the team necessarily to achieve all the things we want to achieve. So I mentioned Python, which, as you'll know, is a programming language. We have paid for a solution which creates subtitles in real time for our webcast output, and which has indeed included subtitles for all of our previous webcasts going back the last 6 years, all based on a sound model, a quite innovative sound model of the States Assembly. So it's a really interesting bit of technology. But in order to put a sound file through that system, in order to create the subtitling, the staff need to use a little bit of Python script. And we just don't have staff who are confident even in using a script that's presented to them. It's just not something we train people in. It's not something they're confident to do. One of the constraints is, and this is where this sort of event is useful, is who do we copy? Who else is doing good work in this area that we can utilize? This is a good initiative, but there aren't at the moment really good venues to really share best practice in this sort of area. And of course, the constraints, we all blame members. If you work in a parliament, the first thing you're going to do is blame members. Members are slow to ditch paper. They're slow to pick up electronic methods. But of course, our staff are the same. The staff have the same spread of competency and capability from people who are highly adapted to the use of digital technology to people who just don't want to know. And the public, if we bring in a new initiative that's digital, straight away I'll have comments around what are you doing for the people who don't use computers. So finally, just to run through what the problems are, or in my view, the opportunities. The website, our website now is 4 years old. It's not new now in digital terms, and that back end is now 10 years old. It heavily constrains what we can do in all sorts of different respects. But we have money this year to create a new website, and we're in the market for the best we can get in terms of being able to present ourselves to the public in the best way, using animation and video as far as we possibly can. Data. We have so much data stored in all sorts of different ways, in all sorts of different applications. And this is a big problem for us. Information management is not well tackled, I think generally, but certainly not for us. But the other problem with data is who knows how to use it? Parliaments create enormous quantities of data, really useful, authoritative data. But who is really good at understanding how to get the best out of that data? Which parliaments have chief data officers who really know how to drive that data and make the best use of it? Who knows what services and information we can provide to members and the public using that data? If I get my phone now, I can do my banking, I can do my shopping, I can buy almost anything I want to on Amazon. There's a whole host of apps I can use to deliver interests and services, but we don't have a good suite of parliamentary apps for members or the public. Some parliaments are developing this, but as a small parliament, of course, we just don't have the resources. And what I would like to see, what I'd like to discuss, is how we can share practice across the world in order to really pick up on what the best methods are for providing those services in the ways that people are now familiar with, not just on computers or online, but on phones. And that would be what I would want to do if I were coming in fresh to start this job for the next 6 or 7 years. And that was my presentation. Thank you.